Hello friends, thank you for joining me for the story of the last 18 months and how I came to start the People's Acu, which is a donation-based social justice acupuncture practice. Before I go into the full story, I'm going to give you a summary. I started the People's Acu in reaction to COVID and the racial reckoning, through which I saw that many of us are not getting what we need, and I wanted to make the most powerful contribution I could to change that. Mainly by making acupuncture free or accessible, affordable, and by making the knowledge that I have in how to treat the body a free resource so the medicine can return to the hands and to the homes of the people from which it came. If you want to make an appointment, please DM me through my Instagram page, The People's Acu. I'll put a link to that below. I'll give you the full details for anyone who's interested. I tried to do an improvised version of this yesterday on IG Live, but I feel it was too disorganized. We all remember that COVID hit us like nothing we'd experienced before. For me, the worst part was seeing people die every day. Here in New York, it was dozens hospitaled or dying daily, and then hundreds daily, and then thousands daily. This was an experience that really framed for me what was important, and that is helping others to heal. Giving our neighbors and families and friends what they need during crisis, whether that's a trip to the hospital or PPE, or bringing them food or water to those who didn't have it, or quarantining so we could stop the spread. I felt really helpless to do much because I had to stay in my home and couldn't be out there helping. This harkened back to a feeling of helplessness I had during other crises, like the murder of Trayvon Martin and Occupy Wall Street. Both pivotal events which changed my thinking, but during which I held back and didn't add my voice. I'll talk about why in a moment. Soon after COVID, lots of us started offering our services online to make money. I started offering nutrition, meditation, and movement, all of which are part of the 8 branches of Chinese medicine. And without knowing, I became a coach, which has since grown into my full-time job as a movement and life coach. I started to get into a nice groove, offering and taking classes online, reconnecting and connecting with others, while at the same time getting used to being physically alone. May 25th, everything turned upside down with the death of George Floyd. This was after an exhaustive spring where Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery had been murdered, and the subsequent injustice which exposed that specific trend became apparent. All of a sudden, we were seeing people in the street. Many of us tried to take COVID-conscious actions while protesting, which is a challenge in a crowd of a few thousand people. But it was clear I had to get out there this time and add my voice in spite of what was happening in public health. And I found it wasn't enough. It's necessary to march and protest and shut down the streets to send a message to the police and to everyone who weaponizes the law or murders innocent Black people, or anyone for that matter. Anyone who doubts that protesting is necessary and effective has only to look at the shifts in policing that have happened in cities which have listened to the will of the people, and the change in laws in the cities which refuse to listen to the will of the people, like making it a federal crime to march in the street or the highway, or giving the police the right to photograph and sue protesters for basically whatever they want. Now, I have always been afraid to protest, although I was deeply moved by events that blew up white supremacy, or shined a light on the class divide, or in some way supported the working and middle classes and the poor. I never protested out of fear of bodily harm or worse. I was especially concerned as a parent, because I was worried about my kids' experience if I die or if I can't work or am impaired in some way that prevents me from being with them. I still and always will regret not adding my voice and my body to the crowd of those who wanted to stand up and raise their voices after the murder of Trayvon and during Occupy Wall Street. It took every fiber of my being not to get out there and protest. It would have meant putting myself at incalculable risk, and even worse at the time, of dropping the fucking Model Minority Act that all of us Asians had grown up with, but in fact stands up adjacent to white supremacy. More on that later, a lot more. Anyway, in joining the protests summer of 2020, I was seeing people of all ages and all races in the streets, and I saw that they were ready for what came next. They were ready to get hurt, jailed, shot, beaten, imprisoned, and all these things happened. Whatever happened, they appeared to be ready. I was especially inspired by a very young lady in Washington Square who led one of the protests. She dubbed herself a radical, a new term to me at the time. She was so well spoken, and there was so much fire in her that the crowd could feel. And I realized that, like everyone in that crowd, my contribution was going to disappear when I left the protest, and my momentum and the capacity for us to create change in our city, our country, and the world was only going to happen if I kept working to make some contribution. It was all of a sudden really clear. I had something extremely powerful. I had healing tools. And I decided I was going to start using those tools to support people like her who were fighting in the streets to create change. And that vision expanded. At first, I wanted to support every radical, every protester, then it was every nonprofit worker who was fighting for change, everyone who advocated for Black people, undocumented people, then everyone who advocated for trans lives, until it was in fact everyone. And really I meant everyone, because everyone at that time is being touched by violence. Violence against Black people is its own thing. But we saw violence also against everyone else. We saw violence against Asians. We saw violence against people of color. We all on the news saw violence against an old white man by the police, violence against a pregnant white woman by police, against trans people, and people who just looked different from whoever the perpetrator was. So then I added victims of violence to the list of people who I wanted to support. Now, those people I treated no charge. It wasn't their fault. They were injured or traumatized, and they need healing. I also treat those who have committed violence for free, because if they want to start doing the inner work to change their lives, I want to support that person. You can learn more in my FAQ on Instagram. I'll put the link for that in the notes. This brings me to money. After I stopped working March 22nd of 2020, within a few months I was out of money. I continued to pay my personal and my office rent, which was over $4,000 a month combined, even though I was bringing in nothing, and unemployment and the CARES Act hadn't started yet. And in the process of being a model minority for as long as I could, I lost my office, which for an acupuncturist prevents working. I accrued rent arrears, which means I owed and still owed my residential landlady almost $10,000, and I started to live through food insecurity. I also had my children with me full-time because their mother couldn't keep them for I think it was 2 months. So I had to quietly make some hard decisions about what we were going to eat and when we were going to eat. Their mom gave me some money for food for the children, and I got a small amount in SNAP benefits, but like a lot of parents, it wasn't enough. I later applied for SNAP benefits and even for public support, and I was denied both. But my kids didn't go hungry, and thank God I didn't go hungry for more than a few weeks. You never really get used to not having enough to eat, but you do get used to it. For this to happen really showed me that economically everything was gone, and the reality that I knew was not coming back anytime soon. So there was massive amounts of people dying, tremendous pain from that, no support from the governments to really help stop and treat COVID, the murder of innocents, and the people not getting what they need, lost debt and food insecurity, even though my business was grossing over $120,000 a year prior to that point. And all of that combined turned out to be a gigantic, energetic movement that uncovered and brought to light the deepest sickness and wounds in our society and in our culture. Before the CARES Act started, I might get this wrong, I think it was July 2020, late July, I had to either keep paying everything, everyone including utilities, departments of revenue, and banks, governments were asking landlords to keep paying, which meant that we had to keep paying our utilities and rents and mortgages, although we had been quarantined and forbidden from working and our income had stopped completely, not one penny coming in, or to go into debt. And even after the CARES Act and with my receiving unemployment, it still wasn't enough to pay the bills until COVID was way down and the economy could really restart, which it hasn't yet, but that's another video I intend to make. I thought it was financially impossible that the city, the state, and the Fed were asking everyone to keep paying while people were not working. And I was baffled by the lack of compassion in what I saw the city, the state, and the Fed do in asking everyone to keep paying or to accumulate debt and pay later. So I started asking how this was possible. Why aren't they helping us? Like, where's the pressure on our mayor, de Blasio? Where's that pressure coming from that's keeping him from canceling the rent so we don't accrue debt? Where's the pressure on the governor, Cuomo, coming from that stops him from saying no taxes will be collected and all the utility companies have to keep the water and the electricity on, the gas and the internet and cell phone on? Why is the president, that was Trump, fuck Trump, but why is the federal government not stopping the IRS and the student loans? And I found lectures and writing by one Michael Hudson, who's been called the world's most brilliant economist. I don't know if he is. I don't know enough economists really to compare or make that decision, but he's well published and really well spoken, extremely well regarded, and also makes a shit ton of appearances around the world. I found him and a few others. I found Verso Books. I found Samuel Stein's Capital City, and all this other information on policy and how our culture, how our cultural mindset is weaponized for profit. And there was the answer. The banks and finance get politicians elected, then laws and policies are made that keep the banks wealthy or bail them out when needed. But this can only happen if rents are paid, if we keep paying, or eventually if we pay after a pandemic. And if people are forced to keep working, even during a pandemic, like Amazon and FedEx. It goes way beyond the banks. It goes into controlling and impoverishing other companies like Puerto Rico, Haiti, and all of the African continent and the Middle East. But I won't go into the details of those right now. But it did become clear to me that this was the cause of economic disparity, and that nowhere is that more clear than in the Black community. All of us are being used as grist for the mill to make profit for the financial and the real estate sector. And that machine was not going to stop or be stopped by de Blasio or Cuomo or Trump or even Biden, all of whom work for Wall Street. But the problem that all working class people are facing comes out more dramatically in the Black community because financial policy is currently destroying their neighborhoods, businesses, public schools, hospitals, and what's left after that? No one's getting what they need in the Black community as a result of the law. And the policing policy keeps the Black community in line, or at least tries to, and the laws support all of that. And that's why we all had to keep paying and to go into debt, and no rents could be canceled, and that continues to today. It's why, for example, to apply for rent forgiveness in New York State, the process is difficult, and most landlords and tenants are not getting what they need. I'm going to make another video about that later. That's how it's possible that 70,000 children in Brooklyn during the pandemic went without a device for remote schooling and had no internet. It's why hospitals and schools are on a shoestring budget or closing or impoverished, while neighborhoods adjacent to them have plenty. And it's why loans and financing and even basics like milk and organic vegetables are so fucking expensive or just can't be found in black and brown neighborhoods. Again, more on that later. So what am I going to do about it? First, make what contribution I can to make healthcare accessible to the poor and the working class. That's the people's acu. Treat everyone, and everyone is welcome. Everyone I mentioned in this video, the poor, the working class, especially black people, especially brown people, undocumented people, straight, gay, trans, even cops, the upper middle class and the wealthy are welcome, and everyone in between. I have plenty of free treatment opportunities for specific conditions and people, and for everyone else, my policy is simple. You pay what you can. I'm never going back to prime rate for acupuncture. I saved that for my coaching practice. And second, teach. Teach all the skills, all the body work, all the acupressure, all the nutrition, all the movement, all the mental and emotional work, everything I'm skilled at and have used for myself and my clients. We all need these tools to be healthy, but we don't have them. Medicine has been used as a commodity and as a weapon. Again, against black people more than anyone else, but also against everyone and anyone in the working class or who is poor. It's denied to us because it's too expensive, or because we're told that we're not educated or smart enough to use it safely, because the information on what causes common injuries and pain conditions and stress and the cures for those things and how we can help ourselves has been intentionally hidden from us. If you don't believe me, go to any healthcare provider, any acupuncturist, any medical doctor, any physical therapist, any nutritionist, and ask them to give you at no charge their treatment plan for low back pain or high blood pressure or for PTSD. It's considered proprietary information by most and they will not give it to you. But in fact, it belongs to you. You shouldn't have to go into debt or in fact pay any money at all to have your low back pain fixed so that you can work, or to understand how your eating schedule is causing your high blood pressure or your dizziness, or to be able to fix that weird phenomenon where it seems like your partner is constantly living in disharmony with you and you're a wreck because of it. All medicine, but especially Chinese injury medicine and Chinese bodywork, all movement, all plant medicine, all inner work, it all comes from the home. And it comes from the earth. It comes from the fields and the rivers, the waters, the forests, and it belongs to all of us. And there is a wave of providers in the nation who are starting to return the knowledge and the practice of medicine to the hands of the people, and I want to be part of that wave. Now, how am I going to get the money that I need? We still live in a profit and capital-driven society, and I have to pay the rent and I have to function. Well, I'm still struggling to rebuild, but I'm getting there. I depend now on coaching for my main income, using movement for injuries and chronic pain, using movement even for trauma, and using meditation and breath work and some honest work on the ego and the higher self in life coaching. I also use nutrition for internal complaints like high blood pressure, dizziness, allergies, severe fatigue, and concussion. But I don't want to be dependent on healthcare, including health coaching, for my living beyond the next 3 years. So I'm looking for other ways to make money just for the sake of making money. And my vision for a long-term reality is working part-time on making money while devoting some of my time every week to acupuncture and coaching for those who need it, basically on a volunteer basis. And also volunteering my knowledge. Teaching. I'll never stop teaching. In fact, it's who I am. It's what I'm meant for. And my teaching people how to use the medicine will always be free. If you care to, I invite you to repeat after me. Taking care of myself is medicine. The medicine belongs to me. You can repeat that every time you wash your hands, every time you brush your teeth, every time you feed yourself. Taking care of myself is medicine. The medicine belongs to me. I'm also practicing tarot. I didn't bring that up because for me it's newer, although I've been at it since 2015. I still have a lot to learn, and I really feel that I have a lot to learn. But I have a lot to say about and out of the tarot, and I hope some of you will watch my future videos on that as well, if for no other reason than you find it interesting. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll remember that medicine is your right. It comes from the earth and the home, and it should be returned to the home, to the people. Please tell everyone you know about my service, especially those who are struggling and don't have help. I hope that each of you, that all of us, are filled with loving kindness, that you're healthy, that you're at peace, and that you're happy. May we all be one family, taking care of and teaching each other. I love you all.